Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining me here in my kitchen today. If you don't know me, my name is Gary. I'm one of the librarians at the Massapequa Library, and I usually do a cooking class there once a month. But unfortunately, because of how things are right now, we can't really do that. So we're going to be making a cooking video today instead. So sit back, relax, and watch as we learn to make a delicious soup. Okay, so full disclosure, I did not come up with the recipe that we're going to be making today. I got it from this cookbook here. This is the official Elder Scrolls cookbook. This is actually based on a series of video games, believe it or not, and we do have this book at the Massapequa Library. So when you're able to come and check it out, please do. Okay, so let's start with an overview of the vegetables that we'll be using today. We've got a bag of spinach, 2 cloves of garlic, 2 leeks, 3 carrots, and 2 butternut squashes. Now you may not need to use all of the squash. If you happen to buy one that's very big, that might be enough. You need about 2 cups of chopped squash. Next we'll move on to the rest of the ingredients we're going to use. We're going to need a 32-ounce container of vegetable broth, a 28-ounce can of diced tomatoes, 2 tablespoons of butter, a half a cup of pearl barley, and a half a teaspoon of salt. Lastly, let's take a look at the seasonings that we'll need for this soup. Now what I have here in this jar is actually a blend of spices that I've put together specifically to make this soup. We're going to be using a teaspoon of this spice blend to make this soup. Now it's unlikely that everybody's going to have this spice blend just lying around in their kitchen, so let me tell you how to make it. We're going to need dried dill, grains of paradise, mustard powder, and fennel seeds. Now you may be listening to that list of ingredients and saying to yourself, what in the heck are grains of paradise? I had to look it up myself before I made this recipe, so don't feel bad. It's a spice similar in flavor to pepper, so don't worry about trying to get it, just use pepper instead. Also, if you don't have any mustard powder lying around, you can use a teaspoon of regular prepared mustard. On the off chance you might not have any dill lying around, you can try tarragon as a substitute. In case you don't have any fennel seeds in the house, cumin, anise, and caraway seeds could be used instead. Now that we've gone over our ingredients, let's get started. The first thing you'll need to do is peel and chop both of the squashes. Now that the squashes are peeled, which in my opinion is the most labor-intensive part of this whole thing, we can move on to chopping and seeding them. You'll want to chop each of these in half first. Once you do, be sure to remove all of the seeds before you cut these into chunks. You'll want to cut these into 1-inch cubes. They don't need to be perfect squares. Something about that size is just fine. Now that the squash is all chopped up, we'll move on to the carrots. You'll want to cut the carrots into slices about 1/4 inch thick. You may want to cut some of your bigger pieces in half, just to make things a little more bite-sized. Now that our carrots are chopped up, we're going to move on to the leeks. Now for our purposes today, we only need the white and light green parts of the leek. So we'll cut the leek in half about here and put this piece aside for now. Now the rest of the leek is still perfectly edible. It's just for what we're doing today, we don't need this part. Feel free to use it for anything else you'd like. We'll take the half of the leek we are using and slice that in half. Now once we have this sliced in half, we'll want to wash it, because if you've ever used leeks before, you know that they're very sandy inside. So just give it a wash, make sure to separate each layer, and you should be pretty sure that you've got all of the sand out then. Now that the leeks are washed and halved, we're going to cut them into slices. Now that the leeks are chopped up, the last thing we have to do is chop some garlic. Now that we're moving on to the garlic, here's a neat little trick that I can pass on. Have you ever been chopping up garlic and you've had a hard time getting the skins off? The easiest thing to do is give them a quick crush with your knife. After that, the skin should peel right off. There you go. Now we'll need our garlic to be diced up fairly small. Just keep chopping away until they're nice small pieces. Okay, now that the garlic is all chopped up, we can start cooking. We'll start by melting the butter. Once the butter is melted, we're going to add the leeks and garlic. We're going to let the leeks and garlic saute in the butter for about 5 to 10 minutes until they're nice and soft. Now that the leeks and the garlic have cooked down a bit, I'm going to add the squash and carrots. Make sure everything is mixed together really well, then add in the tomatoes and barley. Mix everything up again. And then you're going to add your vegetable broth, water, and seasonings. Here's my ½ teaspoon of salt. And here's my teaspoon of all the other seasonings. And finally, I'll add my liquid ingredients. Here goes the vegetable broth. And then the water. Now, how much water you put into this will vary depending on the size of your pot. I'm going to use about 4 cups of water. Now you'll want this to come to a boil, and then you'll let it simmer for 45 minutes. Be sure to check the barley towards the end to make sure that it's thoroughly cooked. Just one small correction. I did end up using 8 cups of water instead of 4. Once the soup has about a minute left to cook, add the spinach. The spinach will wilt very quickly and doesn't need long to cook. Once the spinach is in, give it a quick stir and serve. And here we have our finished product. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. We're going to keep doing these videos every once in a while until things go back to normal. So keep your eyes open for the next one. I'd also like to include a little bit of a shameless plug here for some of the other things that we're doing at the library. There's a lot of great videos that the young adult department has been making. We have a lot of great story time videos that the children's department has been making. They're really awesome. Check them out when you get a chance. Thanks very much. Have a great day.